in the play with some
It's an interesting perspective.
Think about it.
Thank you.
It's 10 o'clock.
Okay, everybody. I would like early. Let's go ahead and roll. I would like to welcome Michelle Baldridge.
Thank you. Yeah.
And she's from Reserve Advisors. And the floor is yours. Can I ask, do you prefer questions as you go along, Michelle? Or?
I do, and that's what I was going to say. I like to be pretty informal. I'll kind of just move through some of the history of our company as well as how we conduct studies. But at any time, if you guys have any questions, please just interject. No need to raise hands, anything like that. Just stop me, and I'm happy to discuss anything and answer any questions. So I kind of thought I'd just start with a history about Reserve Advisors. We are the largest reserve study provider on the East Coast. To my knowledge, there's one company larger in California, and that's mainly because they require reserve studies annually. So we have about 35 engineers on staff, and we solely focus on reserve studies. We don't do any design work, so we have no vested interest in making recommendations for, let's say, replacing your bulkheads next year. You don't have to worry about us coming back and trying to get a contract for that work. So totally independent, third-party opinion, solely focused on reserve studies. The company is 24 years old, founded in 1991, so one of the oldest reserve study provider companies as well. Throughout that time, we've done reserve studies on just about anything you can imagine. We've worked with country clubs, we've worked with churches, we've worked with schools, we've worked with municipalities. We've done all the Ronald McDonald houses around the world, done 3-unit conversions in DC. So we've really seen everything and anything. So this is a very unique association because you guys have a little bit of all of that. So I don't know that we've been looking through our recent projects that we've done the last couple of years. I found some and I listed some references and kind of picked and chose from various associations that have just about everything you guys have, but maybe not all in one. So I can demonstrate that we've seen everything that you guys have seen, but maybe not all in one property like you guys have. So that's sort of Reserve Advisors in a nutshell. I'll give you a little bit of information on me as well. I am a civil engineer, a professional engineer. Out of school, I started doing design work and then transferred into reserve studies business, where I conducted studies for many years, and I still do from time to time. But now I focus on more preparing proposals and presentations. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions about Reserve Advisors, or if you want me just to kind of discuss how we prepare studies, some of the differences about Reserve Advisors.
Your headquarters is in Arlington. Is that your primary?
Our headquarters is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we're based there, and then we have offices. I'm in Arlington, Virginia. We have one in Florida, Minnesota, Texas, North Carolina, and Chicago. Yeah, so I would say our Arlington, Virginia office is probably the third largest office.
In terms of your management structure, do you have somebody that handles cost analysis for you that's on staff full-time? Or is that like it is with a lot of engineers, you pick and choose depending on
Cost meaning replacement costs to be incorporated into the study?
Yeah.
So we subscribe to a database by zip code. So we type in the zip code and come up with construction costs for this area, and it's updated annually. And then we do have someone in-house that compiles bids. So as we work with associations, they're sorted by zip code as well. So we sort of have two databases that we pull from. So we do have one person internally that compiles and distributes that information to our engineers. But the engineers that you would meet with and that would prepare your studies would be the ones that price everything out based on that information that we have internally.
Is that like an RS means type thing, or
Yep.
is that?
Yep.
So that's pretty much,
Exactly. And then, so that's the external database subscribe to. The internal one is one that's managed by us from bids we receive from clients. And none of that information is distributed. You know, we wouldn't go down to Glen Riddle and give them your contracts or things like that. We just keep it for our information.
right. So what you basically do is you use an outside party like RSMeet. You take what's cost us projects and kind of intermix them on a square foot basis or however.
Right, as well as other local communities we've worked with in the area. We look at their bids as well.
Is your presentation going to talk about your foresight?
Absolutely, I can. I have, I'm not sure how good the connection is, but I was able to log into it, so I can show you guys foresight as well. So we can do that now if you prefer.
Just as long as you're going to cover it.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Any other questions right now? No? Okay, perfect. So one of the main differences that Reserve Advisors is that we have customized studies. I'll hand out. So a standardized study is something that we would say satisfies CAI requirements. It has anticipated replacement costs and average useful lives and things like that, but it's just that it's standardized, very average. Where we do more of a custom, comprehensive study. So not only do we meet all the CAI requirements, but we far exceed them as well. Just taking, for example, average useful life. Anyone can pull up in a book or an index average life for, let's say, roads or even a metal roof. Well, there's a lot of factors that affect that useful life. For the metal roof, for that example, the proximity to the coast, that's drastically going to affect the useful life, as well as the type. Is it a corrugated metal? Is it a standing seam? We look at all of those factors when we determine useful life. Chain link fence, is it vinyl coated? Is it galvanized? We really look at all of those things and really customize the useful lives and therefore replacement costs as well that are associated with your element. So it's very customized. It's not just a general, generic useful life and timing replacement. Also going with that is your current maintenance history. How have you guys been maintaining items? We don't want to make recommendations without having that input. We would never just say, okay, yep, you're going to need to replace all of your streets in 2020. We want to work with you guys, figure out how you funded in the past, how you want to fund moving forward, as well as the condition that we're seeing. So what we like to do is kind of sit down up front, have a meeting with everyone, kind of discuss the historical aspects of the community. What have you guys done previously? And what are your visions moving forward? Then we'd go out, inspect the property, develop a condition assessment, and then maybe get back with you if we're seeing anything different based on our conversations. We'd kind of hash that out to make sure we can get everyone on the same page with recommendations. Because ultimately, we want it to be a beneficial product for you guys. It is an independent third-party opinion, so we can't compromise our recommendations and say, yeah, we don't think your streets are ever going to need to be replaced. But we're happy to work with you guys to make it as realistic as possible.
What kind of initiation is required? You said you get with us and determine what our needs are. How does that play out? Is it a group meeting or what is that?
Sure. And I did share just sort of a kind of a timeline or the step on how, like, the proposal, kind of after the proposal process, if you guys did decide to move forward, what the schedule is, how it goes. So when we receive a contract, it gets entered into the queue for assignment. Unfortunately, right now, this is the busiest time of year. A lot of associations are trying to get their studies done in time for budget season. So the first step is really getting in that queue. As soon as we receive the contract, we send you over a list of information we'd like to do ahead of time, and that's kind of. I think this is also on the proposal. I think it's page 13 of the proposal. So that's listed under OPA involvement. That's one, the requested information. So these are the items that we'd like to review prior to meeting. Things like your budget, your declaration and bylaws, a history of any projects that you have readily on file, any plan projects, that sort of thing. Plans, if they're available. We know that's not the case, and that's no problem. We often without them, so that's not a big deal. But that's sort of the first step, is getting that information, making sure that we're prepared when we sit down and meet with you. So we review all that information. Then we contact you to schedule an inspection. For a property of this size, I anticipate it would probably be between 3 or 4 engineers, a senior lead engineer that you coordinate with directly, and then they'd have probably 2 to 3 other engineers that they'd work with as well. And so we define a time that works for the engineers as well as for everyone that wants to attend these. So it would probably be over the course of at least a week, I imagine. Typically, we like to do the meetings, at least a kickoff meeting, initially before starting the inspection. So anyone and everyone is welcome to attend that meeting. It can be just management, just maintenance staff, the board, committees, whoever wants to attend that initial kickoff meeting. And that's really to kind of go over the structure of the association, make sure we're understanding the financials and the budget, things like that. And then we'd want to meet with all of the various department heads. So we'd want to meet with your golf pro and your tennis pro, and all of those meetings can kind of be scheduled however you guys like. If you guys want to handle them, that's fine. If you want us to schedule, we'll do that ahead of time or on site. All of that's really, we're not very rigid in that sense. So we work with you to figure out what works best for your association, but we would want to meet with all the key players, make sure we have an accurate history and understand how you guys fund these projects.
Let me. One thing for us here, it's one of the reasons we're doing this is to develop the ongoing maintenance and capital going forward here. And when you keep talking about how we do things and where we want to go, we want to know how to do it right. Okay,
sure.
So if we haven't taken care of our maintenance there, I mean, we expect this document to say, hey, here's the lifespan, here's what you've done, here's the time that it comes to be replaced. And I don't want our history to impact of what we've done, and what we haven't done is a bigger issue.
Right.
So we want this to give us a real snapshot of where we're at and be a tool we can use going forward. And if we haven't done something we need to, we expect you to say, hey, we want an opinion. Okay, that's
right.
Why we're coming to you, is that we don't, I just don't want to have the idea that, hey, Ocean Pines is traditionally funded, X dollars a year, when we really need Y, or we've done too much. And I just want to make sure that we're eyeball to eyeball on the idea that, because we haven't done something in the past doesn't mean that isn't what we're supposed to. I mean, maybe I'm
Absolutely.
speaking out of school on that, but, that's...
No, absolutely, and that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we, at the same time, don't want to compromise our reputation here. Like, we can't, like I said, say that you're never going to have to repave the streets or...
Well, we aren't, but that's another thing.
So we're definitely on the same page there. We don't want to compromise our reputation. What I meant was, as far as how you funded projects. So let's say, for example, tennis courts. Typically, we recommend color coding them every 4 to 6 years. If you guys, just historically, they're really heavy use and you want to color code them every 3 years, that's totally fine, and we're happy to reflect that in the study. Or maybe it's even you do 2 courts a year every year and you just do it through operating. We would want to show it as a reserve expense to where you're now funding for it in reserves, but you're actually funding for it in operating. So that's more, the conversation is to really make sure that we're not double dipping or showing things in 2 places. But we're definitely going to make recommendations. How often should you inspect your roofs? How often should you inspect the pavement, walking paths, things like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just don't want to, because we don't do something on a schedule that we should be doing on a schedule.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, we may say, hey, we're only going to do this every 10 years, when really historical and the information you have, life cycles are 7 or something. So we want to know what we should be doing, and then it's a decision on our board's part to say, look, we're not going to do this, or we are going to do this. So we kind of want an unvarnished opinion here of what we should be doing. And if your experience here is such that, hey, in this climate you should be replacing a roof every X years, then we want to report the reflect that. Even
Right.
if our board decides we're going to extend that 5 or we're going to shorten it 5, that's an operational decision
Sure.
made. But we don't want previous practices to necessarily influence how your report comes out, if that makes any sense.
It does, and usually we're fighting the opposite battle where they're saying, "Oh no, this is how we've always done it." If anything, we're happy to go more aggressive because there are discretionary things like renovations of community centers and things like that. But we wouldn't recommend or show recommendations reflecting extending past what we anticipate the useful life to be, unless the condition indicated such that it's okay to
That's our
go
decision.
that route.
That's as
Right.
an association if you want to extend a life on something. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to be influenced. So for instance, if a department head were to say to you, look, we don't need to do X, or we've always done Y, we want your expertise to say, no, this is how you should be doing. Then that's an internal decision, a board decision as to whether you do it or you're not. So
Right.
I just don't want to have anything colored by past history here or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And one nice thing is that we do allow 6 months to notify us of any provisions. So maybe it is thought that, okay, you know what, reserve advisors, you tell us, should this be a reserve or should this be an operating expense? You guys come up with your recommendations. Then you guys would have that full time to really kind of go through the study line item by line item and come up as a group in agreement with how you want to fund things moving forward. Maybe you guys decide the color codes can be funded through operating and you'd like it to move. And again, this is sort of a back and forth. We can't compromise our recommendations, so it has to be, a reasonable sort of request. But we're happy to review all this information, go over it with you guys, and come up with that, final plan that really works and reflects what your vision forward. And I would say Foresight, which you had asked about the interactive, is a great tool for that. So I've pulled up an example of Foresight. So this is just sort of a sample community, just to kind of show you guys what it looks like. So the top is just kind of a quick overview, the address, the units, when the study was prepared, what level subscription you have, days remaining until the renewal period, how many available users you have left, and when it expires. You can also download the original study right there. It looks like it might be timing out.
You're going to have trouble with signal in here.
Okay. It's working in the lobby.
Specifically, the question with Foresight that I have is this a interactive, it's a cloud-based tool. Is this a tool that we would have use of on an ongoing basis as a subscription usage? How does that work for the ongoing once the report's done?
Sure. So once the report's done and issued, you get a hard copy of the report, you get a PDF of the report, and then you get a link to access Foresight. So we can kind of set that up however you want. Typically, there is one administrator that's allowed to then add users. But we can initially add whomever you guys want as an authorized user. So when you log in, your subscription for the first 60 days will be Plus membership. And what that does is it does allow you, it's an interactive cloud-based software where you can make revisions and iterations to the expenditure funding plans. And the trial period is free of charge, and that's really to get you familiar with it, determine if it's a good, workable product for you guys. And if at that time you decide not to purchase the subscription, it'll revert to Basic. And so what Basic allows you to do is still view your study, download your study, export it into Excel. You can still attach items, so maybe you take on the community center playground equipment. You can attach the bids directly on there, so you have now this information kind of stored in a central location. You can take notes. Maybe someone noticed a trip hazard on the walking path in a certain location, and then you want to document when it was repaired and that sort of thing. So it's more at that point of a storage database. If you elect to Keep Plus, you want to Keep Plus, it is an annual subscription, and the cost of that is 10% of the study. And you can do that at any time. So let's say Plus expires, you didn't think you need it, it reverts to Basic. Now you guys decide you do want Plus. It's no problem to come back a year later or 6 months later, whatever it be, and purchase Plus. The only thing is that any information, spreadsheet and iteration-wise, that's done during that trial period, if it reverts to basic, is lost. We don't have it. It goes away. It wipes out any of those iterations. So when you repurchase a subscription, you're kind of starting over. One nice thing, and this unfortunately isn't fully loading, but as you can see, this original study, and then the actuals, so you can keep a working actual. That's also included in basic as well, which is free of charge. And then you can add, so you can create various versions, usually expenditures and funding plans right here with the interest and inflation, which can also be edited. So let's say you want to come in and make an iteration off of the original study. You would just do save as and start manipulating the spreadsheets. And let's say Jerry now wants to make working version off of yours. He's welcome to do so as a save as. He cannot edit yours. Yours remains intact. But you can now, start from the original, start from yours, whatever the case may be, and do a save as. And when you log in, everyone's able to do everyone's different, iterations. And if you want, you can save one of them as the, accepted model. That's how you guys want to report. At any time, you can export all the information to Excel. Now, what I will caveat is that it's without formulas. The reason we do that is we like to keep the integrity of the report, and that's why we don't just release an Excel spreadsheet. We kept it cloud-based so that all of the formulas remain intact. So you're welcome to change inflation rates or interest rates and timing, but we don't want you worrying about maybe a cell getting deleted or somehow a formula getting messed up. So none of the formulas can be edited under this software, but you're happy to, welcome to make any timing changes or costs and things like that to it, but you don't have to worry about the structure and integrity of the recommendations changing.
So this would allow multiple users then basically by logging in, and then various people could play with this at any point on the cloud, and it's kind of independent of you guys doing it. We basically take the scenarios and could play with an interest rate or play with a length of time.
Absolutely. You can play with the phasing, recommendations, phasing of placement timing, all of those things, and just save them as different iterations. You can never, the original study will always remain there, so the report will always reflect our recommendations, but you're more than welcome to make as many iterations as you want, and then funding plans associated with those reserve expenditure modifications.
Now, let me ask you a question. On just the breakdown of the scheduling of, 1,500 or 1,800 or 2,200 items that we have, do you subgroup those by, say, for instance, campus or location, stuff like that?
We do. Yep. So typically, like the community center would be a section. For the country club, the course would be a section. The clubhouse would be a section. The maintenance equipment associated with the course section, and I can show you that as well. A sample report. So I'll just pull up. This is just a country club sample report, and it's just kind of Anytown USA generic. And this is one thing that I kind of wanted to point out as well. As far as components that the association maintains, everything should be listed somewhere. And, so the kind of categories we have are reserve elements, which we're showing expenditures and funding recommendations for. There's items that might be considered long-lived, just meaning over the next 30 years, which is the duration of the study. Don't anticipate that you'll need to place them, but they need to be listed. Operating budget items, so we'll set a threshold or a cutoff saying anything below this amount assumes to be an operating expense, and then we're going to list all those elements out. And then the lastly is property maintained by others. So maybe there are light poles and fixtures that are maintained by the electric company, or maybe subsurface utilities that are by the municipality. All of those things would be listed in that section, saying we understand they're on property, but Ocean Pines is not responsible. So everything should be listed somewhere, and if it's not, that's a problem. So make sure to let us know. So this is sort of how the expenditures, for example, are laid out. So this is for the clubhouse, all the exterior building items associated with it, balconies, roofs, windows and doors, finishes, that sort of thing. Interior, Large interior spaces are typically broken out by room, so ballroom, dining room, kitchen. The golf course, so here's the course element. Any bridges, the irrigation, the driving range, weather station, pond repairs, all those sort of things. Maintenance equipment, what sort of equipment do you have? Mowers and tractors and that sort of thing. So that's broken out into its own section. Property site elements, things like paving, fences, playgrounds, that sort of thing. But in addition to that, since you have such a substantial amount of site elements, so again, this is the country club example, your site elements were really broken out by areas as well. So different parks would mention the playground equipment, the pavilions, the parking areas, everything associated with it. So it would be broken out by categories.
We wanted to add something to this, get a new asset. We can go into the cloud, add this in, the formulas would be there to help do the inflation and all of that without you having to participate at that point. We're not going to mess up the formulas. But we can, in essence, update the report based on the foundation, and just how does that work if we need to add something?
Unfortunately, you can't add because everything is formula based, so without it being in there, you
Okay.
can add it in. So you can revise elements that are there. You can essentially leave them out by zeroing them out, but you can't necessarily add them in. Now, workaround around that is to tell us, we might be adding a fence, or we might be adding an addition on the clubhouse or something like that. We can kind of add in folder cells.
Yeah, how about TBD, to be determined,
Right.
3 or 4 lines in each of the major asset things, and then we can just fill the numbers in
Okay.
Right.
when the time comes.
So it can be staged, so we can add.
Right, but then you just have to let us know, because we wouldn't put that in,
Okay.
like blank folder
Right.
cells otherwise. But as long as you tell us that.
But if we got a draft
We've got
report, we
it.
could say, hey, we
Exactly.
need one here, and one here, whatever thing might be, or just a TBD.
As long as it's,
Yeah,
for the next 5 years, we want to be able to add something without having to redo the whole thing.
yeah, for sure. And that's one of the nice points, for going to draft to final report, really taking your time, making sure it's set up exactly how you guys want it, so that you can use the Foresight membership as long as possible that you feel comfortable with prior to coming back and getting full update.
Okay.
Is the Foresight proprietary software?
It is. Yep, it was developed by us, owned by us, so it's just a Reserve Advisor software. And we won't, I know there are some software companies that will just release their software. We won't, just due to the nature of the Reserve study. We want to make sure that we come out and give you a detailed recommendation study prior to just giving you some sort of software to upload your information. So it's really an add-on to a Reserve study, not in replacement of say. I mean, it's really what we found it to be best for is for those large associations and clubs and things like that that want to do for some of our larger clients who are doing annual reviews where, they'd only have us come out every 3, maybe 5 years, but they wanted it updated on an annual basis, which we're happy to do, but we found that this is a better tool for them. So it really allows them to kind of play with it, refine it, put it in each year, kind of as a filler between the full updates.
And so we would have no problem, for instance, where if you had like door service comp, for instance, if we went ahead and made an upgrade there, we'd be able to plug in 2015 with the new numbers in on the line item, or we can.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wish I could show you how exactly.
I just want to make sure that if we do, we can make the updates within line items already broken out. So.
You can. And so each line item has like little hourglass that you click on, and that's where it opens up. So that's where you change the cost, the timing, the first anticipated replacement, future, phasing, all of that sort of thing. So each line item can be edited. That therefore totals up. So it's sort of like a matrix where you look at the line items by actual line item, then you also look at the expenditures by year. So you're, as you're working line item by line item, we're still tallying up by year. Based on those expenditures by year is how the funding recommendation goes into place.
Let me ask a question. Let's say you had something that, we had in here as a 25 life site, reach that 25 life cycle, and so automatically it's going to pop up that we need to do this. Does the life cycle go negative at some point as far as remaining years if we say and physically just move that $25,000 out a year or two? How does that work when we decide we're not, we've got an extra 3 years of life in it and we want to push that back?
Yeah.
Do we just move that, or?
Yeah, so unfortunately we don't have a crystal ball, I mean, based on the site inspection and the materials used and recommendations of different work, we're going to make estimates for that timing. But like you said, if by all means the time comes and you don't need to do it, we don't really defer it. And just make sure to kind of monitor it on an annual basis. There is an actuals tab, so we recommend just kind of reporting that there. Maybe just flagging it, letting yourself know we didn't do that this year. Let's move it out from 2016 to 2017. We'll look at it again in 2017. Maybe another year, so you can do that in 2018. So that's just kind of on you guys, I guess, if we're not hired to do an annual review, to look at it by a year. So maybe next year, at the start of next year, well, these are the projects planned. Want to defer them, do them, and then make the adjustments at the plan.
Because sometimes you've got stuff moving forward at that, and I'm just wondering how you when it just, I guess the actuals is the same as the main, it's just kind of real life.
Right.
One that we would have.
Right. Yeah, so actuals is meant to be the real life where the
other one is the
copies.
recommended planning document.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, your internal, maybe you want to make an assumption with no interest, no inflation, see how that changes. Those are kind of just alternate scenarios as well. But yeah, the actuals is meant to be just that, actuals.
Interesting. And so, YouTube book, how does this level serves that? How does this integrate what art does? Asset extract. Sounds very
It is very similar. What it does is that I think, number one, you're going to have a lot of line items on there. But number two, I mean, conceivably, you would end up with, it would tell you each year what you need to do during the budget process. And right now, it's a little more hit or miss, in terms of when we're replacing roof, when we're doing this, when we're doing that. This is going to pop up, and then it becomes an active decision by the board as to whether you do it or you push it back. That's, you can take what Art does, but somebody then needs to go through and determine, yes, I'm going to do it, or we're not going to. I mean, that's totally up to the board.
This is just a wondering question.
Yeah. Well, I think the value here, whomever, but right now while we're looking at it, we're going to get an actual third-party appraisal of conditions to see if what we already have on the books, I'm thinking the same thing, Dave, how we're melding together, see if those conditions are what we expected them to be. So the list of what Art already has, this will either validate or invalidate what's there so we can update it. Now, ongoing, I'm trying to make sure I understand the original study and the actuals and how that impacts us each year.
And here's one of the things. This is what Art has. This is the most current one. And on here, it's basically giving you your book cost and your depreciation and stuff. But it doesn't have anywhere where it says, it doesn't take that component and say, in year 2016 is when you've hit the life cycle of it and add those units up. It basically gives you, somebody would still have to go through this and say, look, front door replacement, which was done in 08, is fully depreciated now. Now do you have to make a decision on whether you're replacing it? Right now, we go and we look and we say, okay, that window's bad, we're going to replace that window. There's no set, hey, we ought to be if something doesn't pop up, we don't do it. That's kind of, unless if something doesn't break. So this tells you in year 2017, you've reached the life. Then the board and the GM have to say, okay, look, we can extend that out 3 years or we can't. It also says, hey, something that we're supposed to do in 2022 has gone bad now. We need to move that up and give it a new life cycle as we go forward. So it's a planning tool, and it lays out what you need to do. This doesn't tell you, hey, in this year, you need to be funding X amount of dollars. This just tells you your total assets less your total depreciation, and that's it. But you're right when you say, is the breakdown here? I actually expect their breakdown to be much more detailed based on what you're, for instance, you guys talking about rooms and other things. So.
And I will say, going back to the independent third-party opinion, it is just that. So what we're going to do is look at the current condition. How old is the element? How has it been coming up? Based on that, when do we think it needs to be replaced? So we're going to issue a condition. Every item is going to be discussed as good, fair, poor, or sort of between, maybe fair to poor condition. And we're not just going to say that without backing it up in photos. We're not going to say the playground is in terrible condition and you need to replace it next year without any documentation of why. We're going to show you any safety concerns we see, any trip hazards in the sidewalks, any alligator cracking in the pavement, any recommendations that we have. We're going to endorse with photographs. If we think something defer past its anticipated useful life, we're going to make sure to show you why. Look at this roof. It's 25 years old, but it looks great. We're not seeing any sheathing deflection. We're not seeing any shingle lift. You guys aren't experiencing any leaks. Let's go ahead and defer that a couple of years. So all of that is documented, but like you said, it is an independent third-party opinion.
Okay, good. We're 2 years down past you've done the study, we're using Foresight. And if I understood correctly, we can attach a file to this as a link or something like that so that all of the database for all of the facilities can be tied to a line item. So when you go to a line item and want to look at the file on that, I'm just making sure I know how this works.
Yeah.
You can click on it and you can open the file that gives you historical in any of the research studies or any of the, as long as it's turned into data, obviously, into an image that can be added to this. So you can add images, you can add letters, you can create a file for that particular asset.
Absolutely. So just using this 5.001 as an example, the crack repaired patch. So there'd be a little magnifying glass. You just click on it right there. And immediately what's going to pop up is the recommendation. So it's going to show that quantity. It's going to show the useful life, the timing that we're showing for it to occur, maybe every 5 years, whatever the case may be, and the cost. And you guys can edit that however you want. Maybe instead of having quantity and then a unit cost, you want to make it one allowance, so a quote cost. You can change that. You can change the timing, you can phasing. You can do any of that to reflect the expenditure portion. And then there's going to be little tabs that you can click on as well to upload attachments. So that's where you could upload proposals or bids or things like that. There's a note section where it's just like that. It's just sort of like a notepad where you guys can take notes. And then there is a picture file location where you can upload pictures as well. So it's sort of kind of 4-part for each line item.
As you aggregate these intersections, the components intersections, I kind of assume that it's possible to view a section, which might be the country club, the facility, and to look on a year-by-year basis as to what the total estimated cost replacements are. I guess I'm getting at is trying to forecast when we might have to do a major renovation, when we might have to do a replacement of the entire facility.
Right. And so it is like a matrix to where you can look at it line item by line item, or you can look at it by year. So at the start of each year, you can go in and say, well, what do we have to do next year? What is planned for next year? Do we want to do this? Do we want to defer it? Or maybe even like a deck, oh, well, that wasn't scheduled for 2018, but we really think we're going to go ahead and do it. We can get a good price on it now to switch to composite instead of wood. Let's go ahead and do that next year. So you can kind of look at it by year or by item.
But we could look at it by subgroup over a period of years as well, right? So
Right.
we could kind of look and say in 2016 we're spending 100, in 2017 we're doing this, in 2018 we're doing that, which might make a decision of 5 years we spend $500,000 on a $700,000 thing, and we still have money out front. Maybe, we're always looking for tipping points as far as where, replace versus maintain, because we're a 40-year-old community. So
Right.
while this building is relatively new, we have, a cart barn at Country Club that's, not in great shape. So,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of it as well. We don't want, just because historically you have maybe Band-Aided a roof or whatever it may be, that's not going to be our recommendation. If there comes to a point where you're spending more on repairs, you're better off just replacing it, minimizing those repairs, and kind of getting back on track. So that's all the sort of items we're going to discuss. There's tons of rejuvenation products out there for roads. Maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's not. We're going to go through all of those possibilities and recommendations forward. I would say a typical reserve study assumes replacement like kind. So if the building has, say, for example, wood siding, it's assumed that you're going to replace with wood siding. But we're going to make recommendations for alternate materials as well. Have you considered vinyl? Have you considered fiber cement? How does that affect not only the useful life, but the maintenance costs and replacement costs associated with it? So what's now your average maintenance cost to replace that siding versus the wood siding? So we're going to make sure to present alternate suggestions to you guys. Ultimately, it is the board's decision. Maybe aesthetically, you guys prefer wood, and that's how you want to fund moving forward, and that's totally fine. But we're at least going to educate you guys on some of the alternate suggestions and materials out there.
Well, that's on a component basis. Suppose, and this is the real question, we want to do a look at a replacement facility. We have some that are 45 years old, and we are looking at total replacement. Can we do the what ifs? I mean, is there any way to do it? Or do we have to just do a separate program?
So what I would say is, let's just use this building as an example. Typically, foundation and the structural frame be considered long lasting. Over the next 30 years, don't think you'll need to totally replace this building. Now, you probably will need to replace the doors and renovate the interior spaces, the roof, and things like that, but we call those renovations in place. So that's what we'd show as far as recommendations. Now, if there was a concrete plan, next year we are replacing this building. We're knocking it down. It's going to cost X, and this is what we're spending to do it. We're happy to show that. What ifs, like, we might just do that in 2020. We wouldn't want you funding for that. We want to make sure that you're funding for maintenance of existing elements you have, not what if scenarios. Now, Foresight will allow you to do that. And again, it's just kind of manipulating the way it's laid out. So maybe this building has, 50 line items. Maybe you make one of them, like you replace the replacement, you change that to it's going to cost $1.2 million or whatever the case may be. Make that a one-time allowance and you show it next year, and then you defer the other replacements. So you can go in and kind of come up with those scenarios, but our recommendation would not be to fund for those projects unless they're absolutely planned on books, for sure that's going to do. If that makes sense.
So I understand this before, you could create a placekeeper line that is the total replacement line if you wanted to, and then just put TBD in there and it's in the system so we can use it.
Right.
Tell me about the size of your staff in your company. That's what I did not, maybe I didn't see it, just how big your company is, how many people are coming on site, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So we're the largest solely reserve provider company on the East Coast. So staff, we're a little over 50 with various production support. Engineers, we're about 35. So who would meet with you and who would prepare the study is all engineers. I anticipate for a property of this size, it'd probably be between 3 and 4 engineers that would be out here, a senior or lead engineer who would handle a majority of the communication, setting up. We don't want you guys having multiple points of contact, so you guys would have one central point of contact. That senior engineer would kind of delegate to the other engineers as well. So they'd probably be out here anywhere from a week to a week and a half. As far as the time required for you guys, that initial kind of kickoff meeting, we'd want to sit down with everyone and anyone that wants to be involved, and then the various department heads. And that's really all we will need access to locked spaces, so we would need access into all the buildings and mechanical rooms and things like that. But that's about it as far as required from you guys.
Just to clarify, these 50 people are on staff.
Correct.
With your company. It's not a virtual company. These are 50 that work for you full time.
Yeah, we do not subcontract out any work. anyone that has any look or touch or anything to do with your reserve study is a supervisor. We don't subcontract anything out. And then to that, even preparing the study is all engineers. So it's not like an engineer is going to come out here, meet with you guys, perform the condition assessment, and then pass it off to a non-engineer to write the report. Well, we can't do these customized studies that way. It has to be the engineer that was on site and saw it. So an engineer is really handling your project from start to finish. The non-engineer employees do more of the production, like the compiling, the printing, and that sort of thing. And then in addition to that, one of the unique things about reserve advisors, because we have such a large staff, we all have various backgrounds. For example, my background is civil. We have engineers that focus on mechanical, electrical. Even within civil, there's structural, geotechnical, water resources. There's just tons of different areas. So we can really pull from each other's strengths. So we have a pretty rigorous process when you first start with reserve advisors. Engineers shadow for 6 months to a year other engineers to really learn all those backgrounds that they maybe didn't focus on in school and how to conduct these studies. And then they, of course, start with the much smaller studies and gradually work up to bigger studies. But by no means would anyone be out here making recommendations to you guys. The team is then required to go back after they compile all the data. They have to present their findings to our internal quality assurance department, which is pretty unique. As far as I know, Reserve Advisors is the only company that has a quality assurance department. So you're not just getting the 3 or 4 sets of eyes that prepare the study, you're really getting a team. And so what we do is we sit down just like this, kind of sit around a round table, and the quality assurance department is combing through the recommendations. And we go line item by line item, picture by picture, and make sure that the company as a whole is in agreement with the recommendations that are being made. Based on the deterioration they're seeing in pictures, does that really need to be replaced next year, 2 years from now? Does that cost seem reasonable for the area, that sort of thing? So you're really getting the whole company behind it. It's not just one random person making recommendations to you guys.
Michelle, I thought one of the unique aspects of Reserve Advisors you offer, once the survey is done, you offer a continuum of discussion through conferencing, video conferencing. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I'm pretty sure is unique to Reserve Advisors as well, is we do offer unlimited follow-up services. So it's not, here's your report, have a great day, good luck with it, thank you, it's been nice working with you. It's constant and unlimited follow-up. So we're happy to, assuming we can find a date and time, the engineers are out in the field, so we'll just have to find a time that works for everybody. But we're happy to set up video conferences and phone conferences all the time to walk you through, explain anything, answer any questions that you guys have. Maybe when you first get through, you just want a quick review. So we set up a date and time that works for everyone just to kind of run the overview, our findings, our recommendations. Then you guys want to kind of comb through things and set up a follow-up. But maybe in between, maybe you have a question or you have a question, just pick up the phone. We're happy to answer any questions we have at any time. For example, I had a client who had a ton of perimeter walls. They just had a substantial amount of perimeter walls. And about 2 years after I conducted the study, they went to paint the walls, and the bids they were getting drastically different than our recommendations. So they said, hey, you kind of look through it, and what's the differences here, what's going on? So I was happy to review the bid, come to find out the bid was only proposing painting one side of the wall where the association really is responsible for the sides, and didn't include any repairs. They were going to bill that on an as-needed kind of after-the-fact service. So those are 2 very big differences. And again, we're happy to take the time to answer those questions, kind of research bids for you guys, just to kind of see if they're in line with our recommendations or what the differences are. So it's not a one-time, here's your study and we're done. We're always there and happy to answer the call. And that's one of the benefits of the company being around so long. You don't have to worry about us going anywhere. We're here for the long haul and happy to help you guys.
So the biggest thing as an ongoing tool is to get Foresight set up with as many line items as we need, TBAs or whatever, so that whatever changes we make between reserve studies, we can make with that software still being viable. And the advantage we have, some companies, you have to go through them to use these things, but the advantage we have to have you is that we can go in and do Dave, what you were talking about before about sitting on your computer and
Yeah, the what ifs.
the what ifs. You play with that a lot of
You
different
can,
ways.
you can do the what ifs without screwing up the formulas.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's the nice thing, is you don't have to worry about maybe a cell, you know, $1 million, it went down 10,000 or something like that, you know. Right. So it's the ability to kind of manipulate and play with it in a controlled environment. And you do have the flexibility to do it on your own, but we also have an internal help desk. So that's unlimited and free of charge as well. You know, we do it every day, so we're very familiar with it. But we understand, especially as you guys are first kind of playing around with the software, that it's going to be unique and going to be different. You're going to have questions. So the help desk is fully available to answer any questions. The engineer that you'll work with, a senior engineer, can try and help you, but they're a much better resource for our recommendations, our quantities, our costs, things like that. The help desk solely focuses on foresight. So any sort of bugs or kinks or changing, you know, phasing and things like that, the help desk would really be your central point of contact, and it's unlimited use. So.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Michelle, I'd say one more thing. Jerry's going to give you an RFP, which basically is what you already got in the RFI, but based on what you gave us and everybody else gave us, with some specifics here that you can use when you put this final proposal together this week. And if there's anything else that's come up where you may be saying one thing, somebody else may be saying it, he'll send you an email on Monday so that, you know, that way when you give it to us, we hopefully cut all the questions out and get them.
Okay.
Do you have anything for us, questions for us as far as?
Not really. I mean, unless because I think I might have received, because I didn't receive an additional addendum from you, unless there's another one. And
No, this is kind of like the final.
Okay.
Based on all of the input from you guys and questions answered and everything else, just making sure that everybody's apples to apples as we go. We get, you know, for instance, we talk about legacy costs in here, which is like Foresight or whoever else has a proprietary thing. What would it cost us going to this on an annual basis? So
Gotcha.
we want to make sure we've got everything so when we look at it, we can make an intelligent recommendation.
Sure, perfect. You know, the one thing, so we did list, I know, references. So I updated, before we just listed kind of the references, the size of the community. I've gone in and I've added in a little bit of description about these references just to get you familiar with, you know, what they have in comparison to what you guys have. So this is just sort of 8 kind of entities that we've worked with in the last year or so that were semi in line with you guys, but we're happy to provide any additional, like we prepared Glenn Riddle's study, so if you guys wanted to get in touch with Glenn Riddle, someone local, we're happy to give that contact information as well. Any questions that come up, we're happy to help. The one thing that I can say that's sort of a target that we really can't commit to, as far as the schedule, we know how we would prepare the report, but the unknown is the timeline between receive the contract and when the property is inspected. And that's because it's kind of a moving target. It's based on our current backlog at the time. So as soon as you receive it, it goes in the queue, and as you go up, that's when you get assigned. So when we receive that contract, we can give you a much better estimate of when it will be inspected. But until then, it's kind of hard to nail down because it is a moving target. So I can say, like right now, contracts we received earlier this week more than likely will be inspected in October with port delivery in November. But like I said, it's a moving target. It really ramps up this time of year in hopes for associations getting all their studies and done budget season.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if any questions come up, please contact me at any time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jerry, Michelle has your contact information to serve the questions that you want. Jerry, I guess you're the principal point of contact.
Hey, Dave. When and if we finally make a decision, who in Ocean Pines would be, let's assume we have the ability